contract. These are things which we are not foreseen. Because I remember some of the bases when, after making this, preparing this bill of contract, we discovered that the soil condition was such that it required extra reinforcement. And we also had to utilize water-resistant cement. Normally, in construction, when you use water-resistant cement, it means that we must have done some micropiling. That is, if you are building in a place where the water table is very high, when you get to the water, the only way you can build on it is by using micropiling. That is water-resistant cement. You have to do all that. And geotextile. I think we use geotextile in some of the areas.
Did that mean more cost on the
That's what these are unforeseen costs. When you start a job and you discover later on after starting that there are certain situations which you have to address. That's what we call extra works.
Thank you.
And also, if the client wants to extend certain things, he will tell you, then you will execute it and cost it and bill the client accordingly. Apart from that, I had most of the construction equipments were provided by Gamsen Construction. By that I mean, of course, the concrete mixers is covered with this contract, but there are other materials like the mobile crane. I had stationed at the side, 80 tons capacity mobile crane, which was there for the whole period of the construction. And the average rate of hiring this kind of equipment is like $7,000 per hour. So you can imagine for this period of time, it's quite a lot of money.
Very well. Mr. Samba, can you have a look at this document from the bundle MS-243 with a letter headed Sindola Safari Lodge? It was said that you were added as an additional signatory to that account.
That is correct.
What were the circumstances of your being added to the account?
I think this letter was addressed to First Bank, and it was the general manager, according to this letter, Firial Ganim, because at this moment in time, he was traveling out of this country for medical purposes. So that's when she decided to make me an additional signatory to the account. But this was just for the period she was out of the country.
Thank you. That will be all for the witness.
Mrs. Andrews, do you wish to cross-examine the witness?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I have no questions for the witness.
Is there?
She doesn't have.
Pardon?
No questions.
I have no questions.
No questions. All right.
Okay.
I have a few questions. The document you are referring to, that is the plan.
That's the site plan.
The site plan indicates that the contractors for the project was Capital Gas. Can you look at the document again and confirm?
No, I've seen that, but I mean, maybe it's when they were doing the drawings for the site. That's the site plan. But Gamsen Construction was the one that executed the civil works. Capital Gas, their specialty is metal work.
You have said so, Mr. Samba.
Pardon?
You have said so.
Yes.
Yes, just answer my question so we can make progress. So you're saying their name on the site plan does not indicate that they were the contractor for the works. Is that what you're saying?
They were contractors, but not civil works.
They said Mr. Tony Daniels, which is his name, stated that they were the contractors that supervised the entire works.
That is not correct. I think, I don't know what happened to him when he arrived at the commission. I was thinking in my mind that maybe this guy is trying to defend his stay in the country, or maybe he has something against his past, or he was not normal. In fact, the way, I mean, you can easily tell that this guy didn't know what he was talking about, because if you start saying that Mr. Amaru, he only brought his crane, I mean, there are people that worked in this site. He should have remembered that there were people who worked in this site. My chief foreman, a Senegalese citizen, is right here in Gambia. So for him to make such allegations, I think there's something wrong with his mind, because if you say that Gamsen Construction never participated, that's what he said. He said Gamsen Construction never participated in the civil works. Who did?
Mr. Samba, he said Mr. Tony Gattas and a company called Zobex.
That's not correct.
Please listen to my question.
Yes.
He said Mr. Tony Gattas did part of the civil works, and a company called Zobex, which was a company owned by a Turkish gentleman. That's what he said.
That is not correct. I think this Tony Gattas and this Turkish guy came into the whole scene or picture towards the end of the project. Okay. Because at the start of the project, it was only Gamsen Construction. We were the one mobilizing and doing everything. Tony Gattas, or whoever, whatever his name is, came into the picture at the very tail end.
Who was
in fact, Tony Gattas is not a civil works contractor. He's not an engineer. So how can he take care of the civil works? This is a very complicated project in the sense that you are talking about tanks that weigh over 50,000 liters. So any slight mistake, and it was being, the consultants were Bureau Veritas. Such people don't compromise standards. So you have to be a well-experienced and, vast engineer to be able to execute this kind of works. And that is why I employed J.P. Flau. J.P. Flau has a track record in the Gambia and Senegal. In the Gambia, he's the one that took care of the airport in the Gambia. He has done the Futurelec building was subcontracted to him. He did major structures, even in Senegal. He was subcontracted. His company was subcontracted with the Meridian, the King Fahad in Senegal. So he has a vast experience. You cannot just somebody like Tony Gattas and these small Muslim contracting companies cannot execute this kind of works. You're talking about 50,000 tons. For you to be able to execute that kind of civil works, even for you to understand the drawings, is a problem.
Mr.
So
Samba,
for him to start saying that Tony Kata or this guy from whatever gas, saying that he was the contractor, he didn't have the capacity. Let's face facts.
Capital Gas,
Capital Gas doesn't have the capacity. They have the
Capital Gas-
capacity to execute steel works, but nothing like, Capital
who were the
Gas
contractors?
really...
Please. We do not have too much time, and we have to focus on the issues.
Yeah, but I have
Sorry, Mr. Samba. I think
Thank you.
The witness
you
has
know,
to explain.
I think you need to focus on the questions and answer.
No
the
problem, ma'am.
questions. And maybe reduce imputing bad motives to other witnesses. Let's just stick to the facts. Who was representing Gassem on site? Gamsen on site, yes.
It was J.P. Flau,
JP
the
Flau.
French engineer.
In what capacity?
He was in charge of everything.
He was the
civil engineer.
civil engineer. Okay.
Because I have no
How
knowledge of
long-
civil engineering.
How long did you participate in the development of the project? That is Gamsen, the company. How long did it participate?
From inception,
Did you sign a contract? From inception to when? Sorry.
from inception till we finish all the civil works, the basis of the plant.
And this took how long?
I cannot remember now. I'm sorry, but it has taken a long time.
Did you have a signed contract?
I don't know. I mean, I think, I'm not sure, but the fact of the matter is, the bill of quantities I have tendered, which was signed by myself and Mohammed Bazi, which presupposes that there is a contract, whether verbal or written.
Mr. Samba, who were this was, as you said, this was a substantial contract, and was there a general supervisor of the contract? You're saying it's not Capital Gas. Who was it who supervised the contract works?
The civil
from
works,
end to end. Sorry, not the civil works, the entire contract. This was a plant, and of course it had different components. It had parts that were executed under the water. It had, of course, parts that were on land. We understand from Mr. Tony Daniels that he built the tanks. Is that correct?
that is correct.
All right. Now, was there any general contractor end to end?
I wouldn't say so, because, I mean, if Capital Gas is claiming that they were the general contractors, you can be a general supervisor. You can only be general supervisor if you have knowledge of everything on site. Because for you to be a general supervisor, you have to be au fait or be an engineer to be able to supervise engineering drawings, to be able to really criticize, or if you find any, but he didn't have that capacity at all. He was, I'm sorry to say, but he's more of a welder.
Okay.
So that such people cannot, I cannot see him, supervising a job of this magnitude and a job which is more complicated. It's very complicated.
Mr. Tony Daniels said he provided all the engineers, the team of engineers,
This is what
foreign engineers that did the works on the site.
I think that's a figment of his imagination. Tony Gattas, I don't know.
I'm not talking about Tony Gattas. I'm talking about Daniels, Mr. Daniels.
Pardon?
Mr. Daniels. Mr. Tony Daniels
Who's Tony then?
of Capital Gas
That's what I'm saying.
said Capital Gas provided the team of engineers a
I
team of
think
engineers and supervise
it
all
is
the
not
work.
correct.
that's
Capital
fine.
Gas,
Okay.
that is not correct. Capital Gas, they were more of welders. So for him to claim that he was in charge of everything, he was the general supervisor, is a figment of his imagination. Because, you know, I mean, for him to stand here and say he was supervising J.P. Flower, who had more experience, it doesn't add up.
An issue I did not put to you. The project was financed by Total, is it correct?
Yes, it was later on I discovered that it was financed by Total. And I think part of according to what I hear from Mr. Bazi, he told me that Total financed some, and the rest was his personal financing. This is what he told me.
Now we have in the financial statements for 2010, we have loans there, from Total, from the Canadian Lebanese Bank,
Yes.
from Trust Bank Limited. KBC as a bank, are you familiar with a bank called KBC?
Yes, I heard about this.
So as far as you know, who financed the facility? You said Total International and who else?
I wouldn't know. Honestly, I wouldn't know. I mean, Mr. Bazi was the one that he was the promoter of the project in terms of finance. So I wouldn't know. I mean, I'm hearing this for the first time. I only knew that Total participated in the financing. But as to the different sources of finance, I don't know.
There were no board meetings during the period?
Pardon?
There were no board meetings
There
during
were
the
no
period?
board meetings. It was after the end of the project that we had a board meeting.
I have no further questions for Mr. Sam.
I just want to ask one more question to clarify a certain issue. Mr. Samba, before government ever bought any shares from GAM Petroleum, was it not a private company? Was it a private company before government ever bought any shares from GAM Petroleum? Was it a private company?
It was.
Thank you.
Private company. And I think it's even now, Gulf Petroleum is a private company. The government, participates. They are shareholders in the company. But as far as I think the articles and memorandum of association, it's a private company. I mean, government can buy shares in a company, but that does not give it government, doesn't make it public. It can only be public if, like for instance, if the Gambia have a stock exchange, it's a different matter, then you can say it's a public. But for
So
now, I think it's
at the time of construction, government, at the time of construction,
yes,
the government was not part of this venture.
was not.
Part of the venture, was not part of the company.
Government was not part of the venture, and the company was a private company. And I even think, even now, I mean, government is the majority shareholder. Unless they change the whole thing, I think it is still a private limited liability company.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Samba, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Just one question, just to enlighten us a little bit. You mentioned that you're a businessman with years of experience. We've heard that from your testimonies, and it's common knowledge.
Please, can you?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. It's better now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You've mentioned when given evidence several times, numerous times, that you're a businessman with years of experience, which is common knowledge to all.
That is correct.
Okay. And one expects that from investments, you get financial returns, for example, dividends, etc. Reference is made particularly to Gulf Petroleum. We heard from testimonies from other witnesses that dividends were not paid until from 2015, if I'm correct. We just want to understand, during that dry spell, what was your benefit from this investment?
The thing is, with this type of investments, they are long-term investments. It's not overnight business. It's, first of all, you have to allow what we call the period of gestation. That is the period of infancy. For this kind of investments, anything like in business, if you want quick returns, it's fine. But it has its own limitations. But if you are going for a long-term project, you should not look for profit, let's say, for the first 5 years, because that's the gestation period. In fact, some financial institutions, when they give you loans for this kind of projects, they give you a grace period. The reason why they give you a grace period is for this gestation period to mature. And once it matures, you wouldn't imagine, you will be minting money. Even with this Gulf Petroleum, say for instance now you decide to give back the shares to the shareholders, they'll be dancing. You know why? Because today you have this asset with 50,000 tons capacity. People that are interested to come and position themselves in the oil industry in the Gambia, the first thing they will want is to take over the Gulf Petroleum facility. You know why? Because once they buy those shares, that gives them an advantage. I'll tell you one thing, even my shares that I sold to government, I think few months after that, a Nigerian friend of mine, he is in this storage business and in the oil business, he was dying to buy shares in this storage facility. Because the reason why he wanted to buy shares here is to position himself. Once he have even 10% or 15% shares, he will start operating in the Gambia. That will give him a foot in the industry. So something like Gulf Petroleum is unique. It's the only facility. In countries like Nigeria, you have several of them. But this is strategic in the sense that it's the only facility. And the capacity, I mean, will take an order 10, 15 years for the Gambia. In fact, this whole thing, when we were conceiving the project, we were thinking of Mali. Mali, there is a huge market in Mali. So if we can break through, now that the relationship between the Gambia and Senegal is smooth, you can easily export, you can easily, store for Mali. And can you imagine if this facility is to the capacity? I mean, you will mint money because you'll be catering for Mali. Now we are only catering for Gambia. But imagine if you have a good management, they can turn this company into something else. And once the turnover is good, the books are good, the value of the shares will soar. In fact, when it gets to the stage, you have to do your correct timing. If the timing is right, you sell and make money.
Okay, no, that's fine. But just going from what you said, if it's such a strategic investment, as you've explained, why would you sell your shares when you did? Because it's like it's premature.
Well, I sold my shares because of the circumstances. At that time, the government was interested. Who am I to say no? They will start thinking that Amadou Samba is trying to connive with the Lebanese, because, the whole essence of buying my shares was to keep the Lebanese out of the management. So at that time, with Yahya Jammeh around, and I refused to sell, he will give it a different interpretation altogether. And not even my other partners, Bazi and Fadi, we are not happy about it. They didn't tell me, but they told somebody, this country is very small. This person told me that they were not happy that I sold my shares. So under these circumstances, I could not have said no. But for me, as a businessman, given, let's say now, if it were now, with the political situation the way it is, I would never have sold it. These are investments you keep for your great-grandchildren, because there will be only one depot, and fuel is something you need like food. Very soon, I have done investments like that before. For instance, Guaranteed Trust Bank. When I bought my shares in Guaranteed Trust Bank, what I sold my shares for, what I bought my shares for in Guaranteed Trust Bank, today I'm getting 5-6 times.
Thank you.
Mr. Samba,
Yes.
just a few questions. On the contract documents for the civil works done at Mandinari, can you provide them at a later date?
No, I don't think I can find this. I have done everything humanly possible. You're talking about a contract I executed so many years ago, and not only that, I wound up Gansen Construction. So as far as I was concerned, I never envisaged that a day like today will happen. I'm only lucky to find this.
Do you at least remember how much you were paid for the civil works?
The civil works, according to this document, the bill of lading, the bill of quantities totaled about 900. But like I said, you have to give room for extra works.
Yes.
How much the extra works is, I cannot remember.
Okay, but you do remember there was a contract document signed?
This I wouldn't know, because you have to consider my relationship with Mohamed Baziden. I was a shareholder in the project, 1. 2, okay, I was given preference. My company was given preference because of the fact that we are friends and I was a shareholder. So, I wouldn't insist on certain formalities, because you only go into contracts, written contracts, with people that you know, you are not comfortable with. And I don't want him to give him that impression that maybe tomorrow we'll go to court, so I have to sign a contract with you.
Okay.
Business sometimes, you know, most business transactions are executed through just shaking hands.
With good faith.
Yeah,
Good faith principle?
of course.
Yes. Now, in relation to that same good faith principle, would you say you sold under duress your shares?
I would call it that because, like, we all knew, we were all here. And with Yaya Jammeh, I said it here before, if he is interested in something and you want to be an obstacle, he will trample you.
What about the
There is no doubt about it. For him, his interest, you cannot play with it. And I knew that about him. And my life was more important to me than business.
I got it. You mentioned the government was the highest authority. At the time, the public enterprises were obliged to buy those shares. Do you think they also enjoyed the good faith principle, or were they forced to buy?
I don't understand.
The same good faith principle, which presupposes that there should be fairness, transparency, with respect to the valuation of the GAM Petroleum facility and the eventual sale of shares to the public enterprises. Do you believe that good faith principle was observed?
No, it was not there. Let me tell you one thing. Maybe a lot of people don't know Yaya Jammeh. He is very greedy.
But the
No,
valuation, one second,
Yes.
the valuation
Yes.
had nothing to do with Yaya Jammeh. It
No,
had
but-
more to do with the management at the time.
No, but everything in this country was controlled by Yaya Jammeh. I mean, the government was desperate, I would call it. They were desperate because Yaya Jammeh, he doesn't want to see any competitor in business. Okay. You know, I'm sure that his eventual aim was to own the depot personally. This is what I sensed. If you understand what I mean. Gradually, that was his target.
So he contributed in the overvaluation.
No, not necessarily. No, I don't. As far as the valuation is concerned, I told you, I never participated in the valuation, so I'm not in a position to answer your question.
Okay. But in terms of public enterprises having to buy it at the price at the time, regardless of fair market value, he contributed.
No, you don't only consider that. I'm telling you that these people had no choice. Yaya Jammeh was desperate for the depot. The moment he stepped at the opening, you know, when the depot was officially opened, you can see from his eyes that he wanted it. That is for himself. So the only way he can do that is by using the parastatals because he didn't have the finance then. But I'll not be surprised later on he will ask the parastatals to transfer it to him. He is like that. He thought he owned this country. And people didn't understand. We have to look at the bigger picture. This man, he knew that petrol was a good business, so he wanted it.
Thank you.
If he knows that cement is a good business, he will take it.
We have other witnesses, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, we'll take another witness.
Sorry? Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Samba. You may leave.
I call Mr. Momodu Jallo for cross-examination at the instance of Mr. Mohamed Bazi and Mr. Fadi Mazek.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jallo. Please be reminded of your oath.
Thank you.
Mrs. Andrews,
Yes.
you
Thank
may cross-examine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Jallo.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Jallo, you were MD at NAWEC, the period 2006 to 2009, is that correct?
Yes.
You were briefly reinstated again sometime in 2011.
10. In 2010.
Sorry?
In 2010.
2010.
Yes.
Till when?
Till September 2011.
Mr. Jallo, you're aware of the fuel crisis in the Gambia in the 2000s?
Crisis?
Yes, there was shortage of fuel. There was lots of blackouts with NAWEC.
In 2000.
In the years, yes, that period, in the 90s to the 2000s. Is that correct?
In the 90s, I think we used to get fuel grant.
Sorry?
I said, I think in the 90s we used to get some grant.
No.
Fuel grant.
Fuel grant.
Yes, used to get that.
Did NAWEC encounter shortages of fuel during those periods?
No, because in the 90s, I think we used to buy fuel from Shell, from it was Total, and we used to buy fuel also from Amdalai Trading.
Is it not correct that the storage facility at Banjul, the capacity only lasted for a few weeks at a time?
Well, I was not into, NAWEC is a cross-functional organization. So I spend most of my time in the finance and commercial. I was not into power generation and transmission. So.
Okay, on a personal note.
Yes.
Did you face blackouts at your house in the 2000s, 2001? Was it frequent?
Yes, we used to have blackouts.
Thank you.
We used to.
Now, it is correct also that during that period, 2001, 2002, NAWEC had liabilities with the banks. It was in financial problems.
2001, 2002. Definitely. I think the finance director and maybe the managing director at the time would be in a better position to answer that question, because I don't want to be thinking about things that happened around 2000 when I was not the head of the institution. You have to understand, as commercial director, I was more or less focused on one.
Sorry, Mr. Jallo. Can you adjust your speaker or speaker loud, please? Your mic. We are not hearing.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Like I said, I was not the finance director at that time, and I was not managing director. Maybe as managing director, you try as much as possible to know about everything that is happening within the organization. But I cannot tell you whether we were having financial problems or not.
Mr. Jallo, you were commercial director, you said.
Yes.
Was that not a senior position?
Yes, it was a senior position.
Did you not have meetings where it was discussed what the position of NAWEC was?
We do.
Take a look at this document for me, please. Can you give the witness MS-239? It's a bundle of documents. Can you look at the one marked 16?
Sorry, what exhibit do you have there, please, Mr. Jallo?
MS-239.
239.
It's a bundle. Mr. Jallo, it's a short letter. Can you read that letter?
Okay. As promised. Okay, the letter is addressed to the Secretary.
What is the date?
1st February 2001. The letter is addressed to the Secretary General Office of the President, State House.
Please speak up. We can't hear what you're saying.
The Secretary General Office of the President, State House, Banjul. Dear Mrs. Joyner.
Dear?
Mrs. Joyner, NAWEC's financial situation. As promised, please find attached a situational report on the current financial position of NAWEC. As can be seen from the report, the situation has reached an alarming crisis level.
Can't hear anything, really.
Has reached an alarming crisis level, warranting immediate intervention from the authorities to prevent NAWEC operations grinding to a complete halt in the near future. To this end, NAWEC requests an urgent meeting with the Office of the President and the Department of State for Finance and Economic Affairs to discuss the modalities of government intervention, in addition to our own cost-cutting revenue maximization strategies to save the situation. Thank you for your useful cooperation.
Mr. Jallo, maybe I don't know whether the mic is right in front of you, is it? The mic, the position of the mic. Yeah.
Is it okay? You want me to read it again?
No, thank you.
Mr. Jallo, that letter was saying basically that NAWEC was in serious financial problems as far back as 2001.
Yes.
That was written by which MD?
Bachi Balde.
And it has attachments to it?
Yes.
And what are the attachments to it?
Like this one is the bank balance.
Sorry?
Bank balances.
Bank balances?
Yes.
What else?
Local creditors.
Yes.
Overseas creditors. Fixed monthly average expenditure.
Okay.
No. Overseas purchase orders.
Okay.
Orders placed, received and not paid for.
So it's basically giving an overall picture of NAWEC's position as at that date.
Yes.
Can I have the exhibit back? Would I also be correct in saying that NAWEC had various projects or investors who had expressed interest in partnering or providing services to NAWEC? But because of your financial position, you could not enter into agreements with these investors?
Well, it depends. I think it depends.
It depends.
Yes.
Mr. Jello, the evidence before the Commission was that NAWEC could not obtain LCs for certain projects. It could not get the banks to lend to it. Are you saying something different?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not aware of that
You're not aware. That's fine.
situation, because during that time, you know, we used to get fuel. So if we were having problems with LCs, you know, then I was not aware, because most of the time the fuel was supplied locally. It was not supplied from overseas. So there wouldn't be the need for the LC.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
I said the need for an LC, you know, I don't think it was necessary, because you are getting fuel from local suppliers, not from overseas suppliers.
Mr. Jallo, could you get guarantees? Maybe I used the wrong word, not LCs. Could you get guarantees?
Well, I think you need to be specific here, because I just cannot give an answer yes or no, because we were operating, you know, we have bank accounts, and we were doing business.
Mr. Jallo, the tender process at NAWEC, whilst you were there, how did that function?
Well, they used to ask for quotations, you know, from depending on what you are buying. So I think you need to be specific here, because you can ask for 3 quotations depending on what, you know, how much the amount involved. Also, you can write to your suppliers, you know, to specific suppliers if you want to buy specific commodities or goods. So that's how we used to operate there.
That's for local tenders?
For?
Are you referring to local tenders? Was it a different process for local tenders and international tenders?
Yeah, even for overseas, they have a list of suppliers.
Did you issue a notice? What was the process? Was it advertised? Was there a notice? What was the practice in place?
It depends. If you are, for example, if you get a loan from one of the agencies, like the international partners, you have to advertise in newspapers about the tender. But if you are spending NAWEC's money, then you have to write to the list of, you have a list of suppliers, so you will write or you advertise in the local papers. It all depends what you are buying or what you are procuring.
So you didn't always advertise when you were doing it locally. You just sent a list to your local suppliers. You just wrote to them individually. Is that what you're saying?
It depends what the instructions are.
Instructions from whom?
Like who is providing you with the funds.
Okay.
Because if you are getting funds from, let's say, the World Bank, you know, they have their procedure. You have to follow their procedure.
So after the tenders are put out and the bids are received, what happens next?
Well, you invite the tenderers, and then you open the bids in their presence.
Do you always go with price, or are there other factors that come into place in awarding a contract?
Well, it depends, you know, what's in the, it depends on what's in the request for proposal. If at all the criteria is only price, then you go for price. You know, if at all it's price and technical, if you have the two envelope systems, you know, you have financial criteria and you also have technical criteria.
Okay. Was there an evaluation committee for these tenders?
Yes, we have valuation committees, yes.
Okay.
What was the answer?
She's asking whether we have a valuation committee.
Okay. And your answer is?
Yes, we do. We do.
Was a different one set up for each tender, or was it a fixed evaluation committee in place?
With the advent of the GPPA, like you more or less have, you know, permanent members. So depending on the type of procurement you are doing, if at all it's a technical thing like electricity, then you co-opt people from the electricity side of the business. If at all it's water, then you bring in, you know, members from the water department. We also include officials from the line ministry sometimes, and also the Ministry of Finance, and from the board.
Mr. Jallo, let me take you to exhibit the fuel contract. I believe it's exhibit 82, SC 82.
Do you need help,
No, that's fine.
Mrs. Andrews?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've located the document.
She found the document.
Yeah. Here, sorry. There you go. 82 and 82B, yes.
What's the number of that exhibit?
It's
If
SC 82A
82.
and SC 82B.
Okay.
Mr. Jallo, SC 82A was signed by you. That's the agreement for the supply of HFO between Global Trading Group and NAWEC.
Yes.
Now, you indicated in your testimony that you signed this agreement because it was more or less the same as the previous HFO contract, which is with you, SC82B.
Thank you.
Yes, I said I signed this contract because I got a call from Mohamed Bazi that the president sent him to me. You know, so
Sorry, Mr. Jallo, your voice has gone down again. Please help us. We want to hear.
Okay, sorry. Like I said, I got a call from Mr. Bazi, from Mohamed Bazi, that he sent by the president to me. Let me wait for him. So I waited for him. Then he brought the contract. You know, then when he brought the contract, he said the president said I should sign the contract.
Mr. Jallo, I think your testimony was that Mr. Bazi said the president said to come and negotiate the contract.
No.
And
no.
do you want me to read your testimony to you?
No. To negotiate the contract with him?
That's what you said.
No,
And that
I
you
can't
looked at
remember.
it. Can I finish?
Okay, go ahead.
In your last, when you gave evidence, Mr. Bazi said the president said to negotiate the contract. And you looked at it, and the price of the metric ton had moved from 52 to 49. You looked at those two things. You did not look at it in detail, and you thereafter signed. That was the evidence you gave.
In writing, that's my testimony?
No. Verbally, is it different?
No. I can't remember saying that.
You don't recall that?
No. What I said was that I looked at the contract. Okay, I saw the 17%. When I saw the 17%, I told him I think 17% is on the high side because I can get this thing from the bank as a prime customer. I can get something like that. So definitely I would expect, to get a lower, percentage, from him. But the point of the matter is that this contract was not negotiated. You negotiate a contract when it is given. Okay. The contract was not negotiated, like I said. He called me, that the president sent him to me, so he brought the contract, then I signed it. But we did not negotiate anything. We did not negotiate. Under normal circumstances, a contract of this nature, we should have received it in advance so that I can, discuss it with my team. We also have we have a retainer, but, because there was a management contract, so basically they were preparing everything and bringing it to us, as far as I know. So I did not negotiate this thing. I saw the 17%, that is right. I mentioned that to him, but that was not a negotiation. It's just like pointing it out to him.
Sorry, you said you have a retainer. What do you mean?
No, I mean, like we have a legal rep at NAWEC.
During this period, who was your legal representative?
I can't remember, but I know at NAWEC most of the time, at any given time, we keep at least one retainer with us.
Mr. Jallo, when Mr. Bazi brought this contract to you, which you're now saying you did not negotiate, did you call anybody else from any of the other departments before you signed it?
No, I did not call anybody because it was, it was after work.
I'm sorry?
I said I was there alone in my office. That's why when I saw the second signature, the witness signature, when this contract was given to me the last time, then I couldn't understand, because when he came to my office with the contract, telling me that the president said I should sign the contract, I was there alone. I was not in my office with anybody, and I've seen that now in this, when it was given to me, after so many years, I saw the signature of the finance director. But as far as I could recollect, I was in my office. I wanted him to give me time, but he said he was traveling. He was traveling that evening, and he has to take this contract back to State House before leaving. You understand? So,
Mr. Jallo, you were in your office.
yes,
Your other directors, are they in the same building as you? As
Yes.
your office?
yes, I have some directors that are in my office.
Mr. Jallo, let me put another part of your testimony. You said, when you testified before this commission, that you had refused to sign the contract with Samsa. With Samsa. Samsa.
That I refused.
Yes. You also said that the president told you when you refused that if you cannot help them, tell them so. Do you recall saying that here?
Yes, I do.
So under these circumstances, if, as you say, Mr. Bazi brought this contract to you and said the president said sign, why did you sign?
One, Bazi was the chairman of the management contract that we have signed, and in the management contract, they are responsible, for everything as far as NAWEC is concerned, but at the same time also, when he brought the contract, I did not have time. I did not have time. Normally, when he calls me, for anything, before he comes to my office, most of the time I try to, call one or two people that I know. But in this case, I did not know why he was coming to my office. He just told me, this is, the president wants you to sign this contract. So I signed the contract because we were on the management contract 1. And you have to understand the type of, Bazi is dangerous as a messenger.
I'm sorry?
I said he's more dangerous as a messenger than as a businessman. Because when he comes to you and he doesn't get what he wants, he will go and tell the president. He can tell him anything,
Mr. Jallo, that was your perception, was it not?
No, it's not my perception. Because at one time, whether it was a threat or not, I was, he called me in his office because he wanted me to, he wanted me to sign, give him post-dated checks because he had to take care of the first lady, and he was complaining. I told him, well, I don't have a problem. I can give you, post-dated checks based on what we owe you. You understand? So in the process, he started telling me that, Mr. Jallo, you have to understand, we are all working for the president. Okay? Then he started telling me, like, I don't want to use, like the word he used, like if people, I don't want to use the word with him, he will not allow anybody to mess up with him.
Mr. Jallo.
No, I'm coming, because there he told me, even there was a time the finance minister refused to sign, a contract, some fuel contract, you understand, in Abidjan. So he told the president that this finance minister wanted your chair, you understand, and the finance minister was removed. He was sacked.
Mr. Jallo. It appears that you are the only MD from all the testimonies that we've heard that say Mr. Bazi bullied them or used the president to bully them. Is that what you're saying?
I can tell you a host of issues. All my problems with Bazi, most of my problems when it comes to like his contracts, he always uses the name of the president. I've said that here. When he wanted NAWEC to buy the Social Security, to buy the generators for NAWEC, he came to the finance ministry at the minister's office. He came and said that the president said, the generators should be bought. So he always uses the name of the president as for most of the things, as far as I'm concerned.
Mr. Jallo, you are now saying he used the name of the president.
I'm saying that
you are now saying he used the name of the president, and that's why you did certain acts. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Mr. Jallo, you must have been perceived as a strong leader to have been elevated to the position of managing director. Was it not then expected that you would not be intimidated to the extent that you could not take decisions which you ought to have taken?
You have to understand.
And you're now attributing that to Mr. Bazi.
You have to understand the environment, the Gambia has been under for the past, for almost 22 years.
Mr. Bazi, that is, sorry, Mr. Jallo, that is all that is all before the commission. A yes or no will do, and you can explain.
Yeah, well, you have to understand, I was dealing with clandestine people. And Mr. Bazi was an agent of a brutal president.
Sorry?
I said Mr. Bazi, as far as I'm concerned, he was an agent of a brutal president. He was not a normal business person.
That is as far as you're concerned. Thank you. You've used the right words.
He's not a normal business person.
Again, Mr. Jallo, I say to you, it's your perception.
Sorry, the answer. What did you say? He was an agent of what?
A brutal president.
Brutal?
Yes.
That, again, I say to you, is your perception. That was not
no, it's
the
not
fact
my perception.
On the
whole country knows how brutal Yaya Jammeh was.
I am not denying that. Mr. Jallo.
Mr. Bazi.
Mr. Jallo.
Can I finish?
No, Mr. Jallo. Can you answer my questions?
Okay, go ahead.
We are not going into the brutality of Yaya Jammeh. I believe there's going to be another commission for that. I am asking you facts relating to NAWEC. It is a fact. It was a dictatorship. That is not denied, but this is not why we're here today.
Yeah.
My questions are relating to NAWEC, and I'd appreciate it if you keep your answers to NAWEC.
Okay.
Now, my question to you was, you did not take the actions you ought to have taken, and you wish now to attribute that to Mr. Bazzi? Yes or no?
Can you repeat that question again?
My question to you was that, having been given the position as an MD,
Yes.
it would have been because you were perceived as a leader. It's an elevation. Now, being in that position comes with certain responsibilities. It would not have been expected that you would let yourself be intimidated to the extent that you could not take certain decisions, which you now wish to say were as a result of Mr. Bazzi, or the perceived notion of importance you think Mr. Bazzi had.
As managing director of NAWEC, I've dealt with a lot of companies. I've dealt with a lot of individuals. You can ask anybody, even the top government officials in this country. I deal with professional people, as professionals. But like Mr. Bazzi, I know he's your employer. But Mr. Bazzi was not a normal business person. He was an agent of a dictator, and he wouldn't stop at anything to get what he wants. It's either he gets it or you get liquidated, and I have proof. Anytime I had significant problems with him, I end up, losing my job, which I don't have a problem with.
Mr.
But
Jallo,
my problem is, he exposed me, he exposed my life to danger. Because of him, because of, his conspiracies, I spent time at the NIA, at police headquarters, and I even have to, leave my country, because once he mixes you up with Yaya Jammeh, you are never safe. Anything can happen to you.
Mr. Jallo.
I was cleared by the panel.
Mr. Jallo, there is no fact to that. That is your perception.
No,
Again, I repeat. Mr. Kaur has testified before this commission, and he was MD during the time Mr. Bazzi did business with NAWEC. Mr. Abdul Job has testified before this commission. None of them have said what you are now saying. I am saying to you that you were either negligent in your duties or you failed to take the actions that you ought to have taken. And you now wish to say that it was because of Mr. Bazzi. It could have been because of your fear of the president. That cannot be denied. But you're trying to put and link the two, Mr. Bazzi and the former president, is what I'm saying to you is incorrect.
What I'm saying, that the whole country knows about Bazzi, and thanks to this commission,
is it yes
everybody
or no?
knows how wicked Mr. Bazzi was,
Jallo.
because a lot of people lost their job.
Jallo.
A lot of people lost their job in this.
Mr. Jallo, yes or no, and you can explain.
Mr. Chairman, this does not require a yes or no answer. I think the council is really badgering the witness in the sense that she makes a long statement imputing the character of the witness and doesn't want the witness to reply. If council wishes to avoid the witness replying in the way that he is, then I suggest that she asks questions relating to the witness's performance of his work in NAWEC and leaves it at that, instead of trying to impute his character.
With respect, Mr. Chairman, I believe I am not badgering the witness. I have said he can say yes or no, and then he can add his comments. I have been very clear with that. If he has anything to add after answering my questions, it is a commission of facts. Everything has to be before the commission.
Yes, Mrs. Andrews, you may ask questions, but please permit the witness to complete his evidence as to each and every question. All right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also be grateful if the witness could answer yes first before adding his comments, because if he goes into explanations, I do not get an answer to my questions.
Well, as I've always said, if it is a yes or no question, because it's not every question that is a yes or no, but if it's a yes or no, then the witness must answer either positively or negatively, but he will be given a chance to explain. That is the procedure we adopt here. And I'm saying this for the benefit of everyone here.
I'm grateful. Mr. Jallo, Exhibit 82A, was it performed?
(82A)?
The fuel contract,
Yes.
was it performed whilst you were in office?
Yeah, we were getting fuel from.
Yes. Did they perform according to the terms of the agreement?
They were supplying fuel.
Okay. Was NAWEC paying according to the terms of the agreement?
We used to pay them.
Were you paying according to the terms of the agreement?
Yeah, we were giving them checks anytime we received their invoices.
I'm sorry?
I said we were giving them checks anytime we received when the invoices are due, or when the invoices were due, we would give them checks.
So there was no delay in the payments. You did not incur, your liabilities did not rise.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yes.
Can you speak up? I can't hear you.
Yes. Sometimes. But if I may, okay, like this contract, you also have to understand that when I was signing this contract, Mr. Bazi did not explain to me that he was supposed to build a tank farm.
Mr. Jallo,
because the background is important. The
Mr.
background
Jallo.
is important because this is not, for me, I'm not a legal person, but I don't think that I am in a courthouse where they ask you, you say yes or no. This is a commission of inquiry, and the whole country wants to know, the facts. So if you start asking me yes or no, trying to...
Sorry. You can cut out, the preamble. Just keep answering the question, all right? Yes, you may ask. Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. Mr. Jallo,
Yes.
when you say you paid sometimes, and then can you be more specific?
Yes, that is what I'm trying to explain is that, when the invoices are due, we give them checks.
You give them checks, yes.
Yes. And that is, like we were working together, like the GTG, Eagle or what, GMS, they were in charge of NAWEC. So, and Mr. Bazi was also you know, the chairman of GMS. At the same time, you know, he was on the other side. So it was also, you know, in the overall interest to work together to make sure that, you know, things were happening. So we will give them checks, you know, when the invoices are due. Sometimes we will split the checks, you know, but this is an understanding that we have, depending on the cash flow of the company at the time.
We have an understanding depending on cash flow.
Yes.
Okay. How did it work with the HFO supply? Was it NAWEC who demanded and asked when it wanted fuel to be supplied?
Yes, NAWEC would, you know, every month NAWEC would ask for fuel.
Okay. So it was never just delivered to you. It was based on your request.
Yes, based on request, yes.
Okay. Now, sorry, let me just take you back a bit. At the time you were MD, who was the line ministry for NAWEC?
Who was the?
Line ministry.
Well, more than one.
Sorry?
Sometimes the energy ministry, and sometimes the finance ministry overseas. NAWEC. It all depends on the decisions taken by the president.
Okay. But so in 2006, between 2006 and 2009, you can't. Who was your line ministry?
2002.
It's okay if you can't remember.
No, I can't remember whether it was Ministry of Energy or President's Office.
Okay.
At the time.
Would I be correct in saying that every major decision made by NAWEC or every major project NAWEC was entering into, you sought approval from the Office of the President?
Every major decision, like?
Every project, purchases that NAWEC was going to enter into, you sought approval from the Office of the President?
When I was there, like in 2006, after a few months, we had a management contract. So, as far as I can remember, we will deal with the Ministry of Finance when we want projects from like international organizations, but like for some procurements like the social security generators, we did not, NAWEC did not seek, like instructions, came. That was one of the major projects that I could remember, from Mr. Bazi, that the generators should be bought. But apart from that, most of the projects that I was involved in were with the international organizations like the Islamic Development Bank, Badia, Bandes Bank, the Venezuela project.
So you did not write to the Office of the President, nor did you copy the Office of the President in any of your correspondences? Is that what you're saying?
We copy them correspondences, like to update them what we were doing, especially with regards to, like I said, the international organizations. Whenever we write to the Ministry of Finance, then we will copy it to the Office of the President. But for most of the local projects, we never contacted them.
Mr. Jallo, the evidence before the commission is that evidence before the commission is that no project or basically nothing got done without approval from the office of the president.
I object to that question. There is no such evidence before the commission. There might be evidence from, in general, there might be evidence from specific witnesses. So I think my counsel should refer to the source of the evidence. It's not a general evidence before the commission.
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, I'm afraid we'll have to rise. We'll be back tomorrow, Friday, at 10 o'clock.